Welcome back to my series, Dance Mums Uncovered. Until recently, we haven't really heard much about the people who were responsible for recording the cast during their highest and lowest moments. Did any of them question the appropriateness of what they were filming? Well, there was more to the Dance Mums crew than the producers cared to show. Feel free to share your thoughts on the following evidence. First, let's look at crew rules. The cast weren't the only ones on set that were told what to do by producers. In Christi's podcast, she invited a sound technician, Adam, to be her special guest for an episode. It was mentioned during their discussion that the crew was told to keep their distance from the cast, so that they wouldn't get emotionally invested and feel bad for them when bad things happened. This is actually pretty standard practice in the reality TV industry. Despite this, the girls would interact with the crew a lot, trying to sell them bracelets or the food that they brought with them in order to raise money for cancer research.
It was very frowned upon for us to have any sort of a relationship with the crew because you guys are supposed to keep us at arm's length so you don't start to feel badly for us. But I just don't know how that was possible because were they not the freaking cutest when they would like come to you on the bus and try to sell you weren't they selling bracelets at one point? They were raising money for cancer.
They would try and sell the crafty back to us. Yeah, it was like Paige and Mackenzie would come up and say, "Hey, do you want to buy an apple or an orange or something?" And I was like, oh, wait, hold on a second. Wait, isn't that my lunch that you're trying to sell back to me?
Despite the fact that the cast and crew weren't allowed to intermingle, sometimes Christi and Kelly would chat with the crew at the bar of a restaurant on Saturday nights after competition. Christi says that there was a cast member or two who snuck around the competition and took pictures of them hanging out and sent them to producers, accusing them of breaking the rules.
We were not allowed to intermingle or, hang out with the crew. Saturday nights were like our nights off. And so the only people around are the crew. Like naturally, if we were sitting in a restaurant and there was a bar in the restaurant, like Kelly and I would sit at the bar and we would talk to you guys. And there was a cast member or two who used to sneak around. There was somebody who was basically like army crawling through the restaurant, and she was taking sneaky pictures and sending them to the production company being like, Christi and Kelly are violating rules.
Christi has also explained that the Dance Mums crew was expected to cover up all the logos of unaffiliated companies that were on set. This included branded clothing, posters, and makeup products. Personal assistants were called in to put tape over the logos that appeared on the makeup products that the girls used in the dressing room.
They filmed in my house, and I have an Andy Warhol print. And I remember seeing it blurred out on camera, and I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. That became a real issue for us, especially, how like we had the setup with the makeup mirrors. You have all those products there that are being shown, and you can't really show them on TV unless they're sponsored. So we had PAs come with pieces of tape.
Next, let's explore ethical concerns. Some of the crew members had second thoughts about the appropriateness of recording the trauma that the cast endured. Adam, the sound technician, spoke in particular about 2 instances where he was unsettled by the distress that the kids displayed while he was recording. On one occasion, while they were filming at Kelly's house, Melissa left early in tears. Maddie and Mackenzie approached him and the camera crew, begging them not to record it. He couldn't do that because the producers and directors were watching, so he ended up turning the microphone sensitivity down so that the audio was unusable.
I remember at Kelly's house once, Melissa left early and she was crying, and then Maddie and Mackenzie, they come up to us and they say, please don't film this.
I know.
What do? I just turn the channel down and just stand there and do the least amount possible. Your director's looking at you. Everyone's looking at you. If you don't get that boom in there, then you'll be fired the next day.
In another instance, when they were filming in Las Vegas, Paige was huddled in a corner bawling her eyes out, and Adam was asked many times by a producer to get his boom microphone in her face. He says that he questioned it a lot because he could tell that Paige was in a lot of pain. Christi adds that Kelly didn't join Paige at first because she was in the bathroom, making calls and being calmed down by Christi. Adam once again turned down the gain on his microphone, but had to walk right up to Paige so that it looked like he was doing his job.
remember filming in Vegas. Paige was having a real tough time, and she was crying her eyes out. And I was asked like many times by a producer to get a boom in there.
Yep.
And I questioned it so much because I saw so much pain in that little girl's face.
Kelly was there later because I was talking her down in the bathroom because she'd made a few calls.
I chose to take 5 steps forward and put my boom up where it should be. And I just left my gain all the way down.
Evidence number 3, constant surveillance. The more that the cast speaks out about the lack of privacy on set, the more and more apparent it becomes that the cast really had no space on set where there weren't eyes and ears constantly on them. The producers were able to hear live audio from the microphones at all times. This audio was so sensitive that the sound operators could sometimes hear when a cast member's heart was racing. On the first day of filming, a sound operator told Christi, "Don't worry, if you're not near the camera, we can't hear you." Which was a complete lie because she had been fitted with a mic pack. Plus there were people walking around with boom microphones.
The director's shouting in your ear, "Can you turn that channel down, please?" Because it's playing on speakers that are in the back room that people are listening.
Are the producers listening to us too? The cameramen? Like, is everybody listening? Or like,
Yes.
I can literally remember you saying something like, "I need to turn down your mic. I can hear your heart beating." And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, could you hear our hearts beating?
Yeah, yours.
I remember the very first day I was ever filmed. The sound person who worked with me that day said, "Don't worry, if you're not near the camera, the mics can't hear you." And I was stupid enough to believe that.
That is not the case.
I mean,
liar.
On an interview promoting their podcast, because Mum said so, the mums revealed that the producers would listen to their conversations to figure out the kinds of things that would provoke each cast member, and then use that information to manufacture drama. The producers would even sometimes take spare microphones and hide them in places where the cast would go frequently, like the costume room or the dancer's den. And sometimes the crew would even be asked to follow the cast into the bathroom.
They would create these storylines just from listening to us talking. We had those mics on for 12 hours a day.
Should we do what's called a plant mic, which means I get one of the spare mics and kind of hide it in a bush. You kind of figure out where the cast go and hide. There was a couple of plant mics in the shop at times. There might be one left, by the kids when they're kind of having a little chat.
Like in the dressing room, like in the den.
Yes.
I can remember times where I would be so pissed and I was like, "I'm going to the bathroom." And you guys would have to follow us in the bathroom at times.
4. Drastic measures. In order to get the footage they needed to create a compelling story, the crew had to go to some drastic lengths. It has recently been revealed that the tweets in reunion specials were written in advance by producers. Then these producers would ask people that they knew, or people that crew members knew, to tweet them. For instance, Sebastian, an editor on Abby's Studio Rescue, posted this tweet that was included in the Season 4 special Girl Talk. Maddie and Mackenzie actually recently appeared in a podcast with someone who was approached to post one of these tweets.
My best friend was like, "Oh, my aunt is like a producer or something for the show. I don't know. You guys did like reunions or things where you answered questions, correct, on stage?" I didn't know. So my best friend was like, "Oh, can you just tweet out?" Like, I guess they had already, like, they planned the questions for you guys. And then they're like, "Oh, but we need these tweets to go out so it looks like people specifically ask these questions." So I was like, "Yeah." So they gave me some question to ask. I just copy pasted it onto Twitter. I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever."
The cast also had to wake up at 4 in the morning to catch their bus to the competition at 6 o'clock. The crew had to be there too, and sometimes there were around 40 crew members crammed into the bus alongside the cast. It's no wonder that the mums were worried that there wasn't enough room on the bus when the mini-team showed up.
We'd have to get up at 4 a.m. to get on the bus, to have their makeup done and get on the bus by 6 to get to the competition.
I mean, there's probably 40 plus people on the bus.
Oh, I think there were more than that.
In order to make sure the editors didn't have any issues with continuity, the mums sometimes had to wear the same clothes for several days straight. For the same reason, they also weren't supposed to eat their food whenever they filmed scenes at restaurants.
Remember when we used to have to wear the same outfit like 4 days in a row because they needed... Remember that? They had to keep redoing things?
And your hair had to be exactly the same. Your jewelry had to be the same.
And I remember when we had to go film at that restaurant, I had this glorious food in front of me that all I wanted to do was eat. Eat it. And we didn't get to eat it. I know.
Oh, we learned to eat after they would say, no, you can't eat. We're like, we're eating.
And finally, we have drama with the cast. After Chloe dropped her hat in the Pink Lemonade group dance, Christi and Chloe stormed out of the building. Well, in Season 3, Episode 1, during the segment that teases the upcoming drama for the season, there is a short clip of Christi pushing a cameraman. While we don't have the full context of this outburst, it is quite likely that Christi was frustrated with the show and wanted her personal space and privacy back. Recently, Kira has revealed that during Season 6, Episode 7, she was attacked by both the mums and the crew for staying home with her 2-month-old son. She felt like Melissa turned on her, and Holly was trying to compare it to being a working mum. Kira only went to that competition because it was in Arizona, which is where she was raising her son with her boyfriend David. Part of the reason why Kira didn't tell anyone that she was pregnant for 4 to 5 months was because she didn't want anyone starting drama over it. She predicted correctly that the mums would start some sort of drama over her family situation, although she wasn't expecting it to be over her maternity leave.
They actually filmed an episode here in Arizona, and Jet was a month and a half old. They were awful, like literally awful.
The moms or the crew?
Oh, all of them. And they just made like they turned my pregnancy into like this huge drama of me abandoning my child. I'll never forget Holly being like, I went to work as a principal. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm sure you took your maternity leave too. Kalani could go with you. Melissa was fine with that decision. She was all about it. And then it was like, when I come back on the show, she's suddenly not, and I abandoned my child. I don't think I told anyone until I was like 4 or 5 months, because I'm like, oh.
It just gives them something else to like fight with you about.
According to Melissa, child labour laws didn't come into effect for reality television during the first few seasons of the show. This meant that the kids would sometimes work 10 to 12 hours in a day. Apparently sometimes the producers wouldn't let the kids leave until their mums fought, so they would just choose something to bicker about so that they could go home. Logic dictates that the crew would have had to stay late as well. Melissa recalled that once Maddie was still learning her solo at midnight.
Our kids were at the studio till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Everybody would leave, the teachers would leave, but they had to stay and practice. It's almost like they don't believe me when I'm like, these kids work 10 to 12 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Before, child
labor laws.
Labor laws came in effect for, reality. Because remember, we didn't have it. Maddie was learning a solo at midnight. And I pulled her and they were like, no. I'm like, it's midnight. My daughter has homework. And that's when we got the child labor laws in effect, and they couldn't work till after 10.
But that's why we'd fight all the time. It's because they told us you're not allowed to leave until you fight. So we would just start fighting.
So what do you guys think? Do you think the crew could have done more to protect the cast? Or do you think they were just doing their job? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.